Did you listen to the Hot Breakfast this morning? Here's what you missed.
You know, there is a controversial ICT bill that's just been passed, by the way.
Okay.
If you didn't know, we're going to tell you more about it. It's about to get to the presidency for his ascension, and it's causing a stir in the ICT world. So here in-house to talk more about it, we have Mercy Kimalat. She's a CEO, Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya, or ASEC, and Irving Amukasa. He's a founder of Sophie Bot. Both of them join us live in the studios. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for your time. So, Irving, let me start with you. What is Sophie Bot?
Sophie Bot is artificial intelligence to answer your questions on sexual and reproductive health. Yes, I just said sexual and reproductive health.
You're an expert in that kind of health?
I'm an expert in AI, creating the technology that automatically automates answers, but then we've got help with our answers. As I was telling Jeff earlier, we got lucky in 2016, got funded by the United Nations Population Fund, and since then we've been constantly trying to automate and make access to information on sexual health as easy as asking a question to Sophie Bot. You can ask about symptoms of STIs and the same. You can ask how to use contraceptives. What we don't do is we do not diagnose symptoms. That's we haven't built that. But then it can give you generic symptoms if you ask specific subjects.
Mercy Kimalat, tell us about this bill and why is it controversial?
So the ICT bill, it looks at how to standardize the ICT innovation ecosystem, and then also looking at how to train and support ICT practitioners as they continue doing their work. And then also they have found a way of trying to also have enforcement measures for those ICT practitioners who are actually, either do malpractice or provide an illegal service, perhaps to a customer or to an organization or the larger population. So the bill in itself is quite controversial because it looks at hindering the innovation ecosystem. It's very tricky to try and structure or regulate innovation in itself because there are many dynamics and it keeps adapting every single time, right? And so with the bill coming into play, then it creates that like a big barrier, one for ICT practitioners. And I think I was mentioning to Ivan even before, if you look at people who are, for example, many parents are doing coding for their kids, right? Coding for skills programs, or after high school, the students actually go and participate in different programs like Akira Chicks, which is now targeting to young girls, trying to find them a way to integrate them into the ICT sector. And then also if you look at other programs like Power to Learn, which is trying to target 1 million software developers in Africa, and actually they're using Kenya as a starter base, then if we have this regulation where it says that for you to actually be an ICT practitioner, which, by the way, even if you look at the bill, it doesn't even define what ICT practitioner is. And then again, if you look at how it's supposed to be regulated, it's looking at someone who has to have a bachelor's degree, either in ICT or electrical engineering, and then if alongside that, you need to actually have 3 years post-working experience to actually be licensed by that. And then also you have to pay license fees annually for that again. So again, it becomes very tricky and also very like an uphill task for such a young innovator who, for example, like Ivan he didn't even study IT. Right? And here he is creating a Sophie Bot, which is AI powered, self-taught, and like in quote unquote, if you reference that back to the bill, that means that whatever he's doing
is illegal.
Yeah,
Kenya, we want people with degrees.
That's the thing. And then if you look at like how the Kenyan ecosystem has really grown, like Kenya is number 2 in the entire Africa ranking in terms of startup ecosystem. If you look at how we've grown,
it's because of people like Irving. I mean, people
exactly, because they're using technology to drive innovation, and then you're embedding technology in existing traditional sectors. So you have agri-tech, you have fintech, you have creative tech, and it's a way of using technology to scale your solution across different boundaries and finding a way to include more people into that particular service or sector, or even providing a key service to them.
So why would Parliament or the National Assembly or whoever created this bill, why would they do this to curtail you guys? Why?
So somebody somewhere is very interested in profiteering from this burgeoning sector, creating an artificial bottleneck so that he gets paid every time somebody wants to get into the space. That using the argument that other professions are regulated and are standardized, like law, like medicine, like accountants. And we keep pointing to them, like, look at how many people left those fields because of the bottlenecks in those fields and came into technology. One of the sponsors of this bill, Otsoti, forgive me, I cannot remember your full name, runs an ICT training company. So it's crony capitalism, using state power to personally enrich themselves, and it's a small community trying to enforce this on the greater and the bigger community, and they don't understand and they don't live in the realities of how new technology gets into the space and how new developers are formed and how new developers get to learn and get to practice in this space.
So it was in just 2016, it was kicked out, brought again back in 2018, kicked out, and then brought again back in 2020 and passed. Now this is now where the stage we are in. The challenge we're having, and just representing other different types of associations. So we have ASEC, which is a membership association of innovation hubs in Kenya, which is the accelerators, incubators, maker spaces. These are the spaces where entrepreneurs come and actually build their solutions using technology, or even trying to find a way of embedding technology to enhance their own business model or value proposition. But then again, we also have other associations like the FinTech Association, which is now supporting FinTech startups. If you look at how we've grown as an ecosystem, it's purely because of the technology, right? And then also looking back to investments, we've had a lot of investment channeling into the country, up to almost 300% of investment, and that's actually per the World Bank report. And then also looking at the penetration of Kenya, we have 97% of penetration of ICT. And that actually has created like the right framework or the right environment for these innovations to really spur. So the challenge that we're having is that when this bill was tabled, we were not invited to actually give feedback. And if we actually gave feedback, it was actually disregarded. So we're wondering, who is this bill going to serve, Because again, if we're saying we are number 2 in Kenya and number 1 in East Africa as per the Startup Link, which is World Ecosystem Mapping, then I think in a way we're actually taking ourselves back by creating barriers of entry for these young innovators to thrive and really succeed.
Do you feel like maybe there's a lot of barriers being created for a lot of sectors because you're not the first people to complain?
Well, that's the challenge, because technology cuts across all sectors, like literally. So you're telling me, for example, if I'm a nurse in the hospital, I cannot operate this technology because I'm not licensed. Yet I've spent 7 years in school and maybe another 3 years for like learning practitioning. Then again, I come to the actual working environment. I cannot literally operate this because I don't have a license. Because again, it goes back to the bill. It is not defined on who is an ICT practitioner.
Covers engineers like me, guys who run data centers, and then to the guy at the corner of the shop who runs who pirates CD, who makes movies and whatnot. It covers all of them. Even DJs, they'll see your laptop with so many stickers. They'll be like, "Where's your license?" Yeah.
But listen, guys, why make noise? I mean, it looks like too little, too late. Yeah,
we've been at it since 2020. To go back to the previous question, I'd like everyone to go to www.kes.ke. The site I spun up. It has all the submissions we've made to Parliament and all the submissions we made to Parliament. Lawyers Hub asked for reviews we submitted. Liquid Telecom, the CEO, has an actual legal opinion on how this bill infringes on rights. It was submitted to the committee. The only thing that they changed is the aside from standard academic requirements, you have to demonstrate to the board that you can actually develop software. We've been at it since 2020. Every single day since 2020 December, my personal bot, like engineer, I have an account that tweets at Joe Musheru every single day, telling him, please take down this bill. I was skeptic about his effort about it, but while I was building the site, his ministry wrote out an entire report against this bill and submitted it to the specific committee. So we've been making noise, and we've been following the structures, and they have failed us.
You have a bot that actually writes to him every single
Does
day.
it write the same thing?
Sometimes
it's got a bad mood, sometimes it's got a good mood, sometimes it's humorous.
Unlike Sophie Boy doesn't have AI, it's very rule based. So every single day at a specific time at Joe Musheru, and there was even a petition that got about over 18,000, 18,000 signatures. It
In a weekend, just 2 days. Rapid fire, create WhatsApp groups, guys are talking. We even had Twitter spaces, we had Zoom calls just to get everyone together to understand what the bill is. Because also, again, we're trying to pull in other stakeholders like universities, corporates. This is going to affect them. We have Visa, Google have set up their offices here, and also Microsoft. What does that mean for them? No one's also talking about the other side of the bill, and actually the implication of how, if you're restricting talent within the ICT sector, hey, what's going to happen?
Where you headed? So and this is a last ditch. It was even on a different media station. The day that bill was initially tabled, making a case against this bill. So there's somebody said on Twitter, like, if you raise an issue and complain, and somebody tells you to follow the system channels of, it's because they know they control the channels, and you have overpowered. So at this point, our only recourse is to tell the president, if by any chance you're hearing this, our petition on www.keis.ke, there's an open letter submitted to him, trying to ask him and petitioning him to not assent to this bill. We are at the final step. It's a culmination of a ton of effort that's been happening in the background. And as a lesson to everyone, as you follow the proper channels, also make noise outside the proper channels.
Like, be part of policy and lobby, right? Yeah, and that's actually what we try to do even at ASEC, that we actually try to educate people about policy. It's not just about building a great business and thriving and selling, but there's a whole political environment that you have to consider. And that's why he's also very here and very speaking about passionately about it, because that will affect him. If you look at the licensing fees that they've actually talked about in the bill, they don't specify. It could be 200 bob, it could be 100,000, 500,000. We don't know. If you think about the retraining, because they talk about coming up with courses to train these ICT practitioners, we have no idea on that what that could be. And
then it's also not realistic, because, like you've said, those COBOL and Pascal, I don't know what the other name, C++, but all the languages back in the day that you had to actually write a code yourself. Nowadays, there's like templates or libraries, as you call them, and put together. So who's going to come up with telling you how to put these things together? While it's kind of obvious, you can teach yourself online.
And here's the other kicker also. Like, for example, the license is only for 1 year. Right? So if you get lucky and get the license, it's not a guarantee you'll get a renewal. It's subject to the review and approval of the institute, the ICT Practitioner Institute.
Have you guys put together what you'd like the bill, like an option of how the bill should be that makes sense for your group and stakeholders, so that instead of just saying change this, you say this one would work better, please read this and compare?
I think
create a bot that can write these things. What is it?
like our bill, our version of the bill will be a blank page.
You're done at the image.
Leave it blank. If you have any subsequent law on privacy, on cyber security, please pass them and we'll support them.
If they don't know about how the ICT, because you're younger, how old are you?
26.
26.
Yes.
And then someone who's like in our age, 40 and above, maybe 95, like Jeff. ICT has come a really long way. I mean, make sense, Jeff. Yeah. Because if someone's to tell you make a program, you'll be like, what? Let me look for a programmer, send your CV.
Correct.
Even me, I know that nowadays you can put 2 and 2 together. But you see now the people in charge of these committees, and let's say the ICT minister, the people advising them are also in that whole generation. So he needs to see it from your side. Like during our time, we went to college to learn how to switch on a computer. Can you believe that? Introduction to which this is a mouse, this is a screen, this is a CPU, and you did it for 2 weeks. You understand? And I imagine someone who is 48, 49, 50 is running a whole ministry. They've got to do budgets, they've got to go to places, they've got to politic. Again, he doesn't have exactly all that time to read from page 1 to 90 in font 2. So maybe if you came up with an alternative, with a guideline of how you think it should be, then now you have an engagement. I think that would make sense. Have you guys done that?
Oh yeah, let me just give you like what is currently working. So for most of the IT professionals, they have certified bodies already, and they're existing. So like you have Oracle, you want to be like a database engineer. If you have Cisco for networking engineer, you have Project Management Institute. If you want to do PM on the ICT side, project management on the ICT side, they're already certified bodies there. And the good thing also, they are global. So then again, also they take in the issues of ethical and also cybersecurity and many other issues that are actually related. Now the good thing with that one, it's already established, right? And there are lots of standards that are being used, and even the professionals keep retraining themselves every year. And it's not a hindrance. So the thing is, we're just trying to say is, can we, instead of trying to regulate everything, because even right now it's just trying to curtail the whole sector, instead of just trying to create some sort of enabling environment to help these tech innovators to thrive. Again, we're thinking about the pipeline, right? So right from kids as 8 years old, right? So we're creating a whole generation from 8 years old down to whichever, and that's a whole generation that can actually be affected if this bill passes, because you're saying we cannot teach IT or practice unless you have a bachelor's degree, you're licensed, on all other barriers. So again, we're just trying to say that there are already bodies that are already doing this. Can we then have a multi-sectoral discussion? Because even for us as private sector, we've come together. We've discussed, we're also part of the KEYS website. We've written our own letter to the president. They've listed all the organizations that are actually backing this up. And I think also we're speaking to TESPOC as well and many others. And we're just trying to say, let's come together and actually think of something more constructive to actually help the ecosystem to thrive. Because if we don't do that, we've been really doing a lot of work as ASEC in terms of our internationalization pillar, trying to promote the Kenyan ecosystem innovations to the global and Pan-African level. And we've actually been able to attract a lot of investors and different diverse development partners and international players into the Kenyan space. If we have this bill which is creating a rigid framework, then even for them it becomes hard. That means they can only invest in a specific pool of businesses or
pool of developers
or something, and that really becomes a limit. For example, Power to Learn wants to train 1 million software developers in Africa, starting with Kenya. What does that mean? That's funding already coming in to support Kenya deal with unemployment rate. Right. So again, it all goes back to what's the ripple effect of this, and this what we're trying to. I think at the end of the day, what we're just trying to say is we're here to collaborate with the government, to work with them to enhance the bill. And we're praying for the president to not assent.
Like last week, but one, they say they're introducing software coding for kids or something like that. Yeah, that was run by the Ministry of Education or in conjunction with the ICT.
That's part of Jomusheru. It's part of Jomusheru's,
which means is almost aligned to what you're doing. Is just that the little bottlenecks in there, that bill that's hindering the rest of the.
And it also shows how like disjointed like government policies, because here you have a policy like trying to get more children into technology, and here you have this other arm of government trying to pass a bill. And I think like a reason why this bill passed, and it goes into Nick's point, I don't know, and I listened to it when they were doing the second reading, and they made updates like, oh, this is it's they think it's a rogue ecosystem. Which doesn't exist. We have our own communities. And the second is that stage one thing, if you don't work in technology, you don't understand the nuances. So like, every other profession is standardized. Let's standardize this this profession. Some other members of parliament were talking about if this bill will help with people hurling personal insults at them on Twitter, but the bill does it also goes to how well they did. It wasn't probably a hot topic issue for them to care to put as much care into this bill as they put into the IBC bill. In case I think that's one of the reasons. One of the only reasons.
There's also the fear of the unknown, and Nick was alluding to this earlier on. You guys didn't give us quite an answer about cybercrime. People fear that, and it's on the rise. Let's admit it. It's on the rise, and it could be out of control. How do you curtail that? How do you regulate that?
Why the biggest and the best hackers were founded in America, like in the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem. They didn't pass a law to license every person working on a computer in Silicon Valley. They passed subsequent laws on cybercrime, and we have an active cybercrime law. There's even a point where bloggers were against it because the cybercrime law could be used against them on libel and whatnot. So we know, and they know they can pass ethical laws on underlying ethical issues. If right about is all these other ethical concerns you want, we can pass them. If it's one fear was like if you pay a freelancer and then he doesn't deliver, you can add an ethical law that covers every other freelancers on what legal redress somebody has if somebody, when they paid, or somebody breaches contract, and there's even contract law around that. So you can pass all these other laws around, and we are willing to help pass the law. We by default are regulated by other privacy laws out there, because when we deploy our software and our apps, we have to comply to the privacy laws where we are complying. But then we are very open to implementing our own Kenyan privacy.
But the Data Protection Act does cover the elements of who actually will have access to your data and how they actually manage it. But alongside that, also having the policy is great, but what we also need to do is do upskilling for people. As technology is advancing, more fields are emerging, right? So back in the day, cybersecurity was not even an issue, because it's just a computer, log in somewhere and have maybe an intranet, so local network within the same area. But now we're having people access global communities all over the world, and they're actually becoming more exposed. Right now, what's happening is that there's more training for cybersecurity professionals, which also is a good thing, because again, we also need those professionals to counter the unethical people who are also doing that, as well as having the law with enforcement. But then also, I think there's a program that Strathmore was running on ethical hacking. So again, introducing these kind of courses which are more not controversial, but they actually help to protect the larger population against
from evil
exactly actors. And those are the people that banks are hiring to also protect their systems and information. There's the same people that are going to hire for corporates and many other bigger organizations which actually have a larger customer base who are now at risk in terms of the information being leaked. So I think those are some of the things that are happening. But then again, as well, we also have to hold each other accountable. If you know Kenya, we're a very social, community-driven culture. Even I think we've seen that through forming a WhatsApp group with 100 people in a day, because we want to share and learn. So I think also calling out that behavior, and then also having associations which actually now have a grievance conduct.
Worst case scenario with this bill?
I think we'll have to go back to the drawing board. I know for sure that we'll have to find a way of fighting it in court or finding a way of dialogue again, but still I think we have to go back to the drawing board and actually relook at how the whole training aspect is done. It's going to be it's going to be an uphill task, because to get to where we are, so back in 2010 we had the fast tech community, which was iHub, bringing in innovators, have hackathons, boot camps. Even I actually was working at iHub, and that's actually how he grew his skill set. So again, taking us back before 2010, it's going to be an uphill task, to be honest, because again, it looks at how we're going to limit, because the problem with this bill is we're going to create a digital divide. And if you look at last month, Kenya Bureau of Standards, they actually launched an national ICT framework or standard for people with disabilities. So now it was actually telling all ICT products and service providers that they have to use assistive technology to ensure people with disabilities can access their services online or access, anything information or economic opportunities online. And that was just last month in May, and we're celebrating that because now we're having inclusion of people. Now with this bill, we're going to again go back to the digital divide, because again it goes to who has internet and who actually has money to go to school to actually get formal education, to learn. And yet we know that there's a large population of Kenya that is non-formal, and actually they're doing the gig economy. Again, if you go back to campus or after high school graduates, they actually use IT to find a way of having alternative revenue. So apart from just looking at it from a commercial perspective where they're able to earn a bit of money for upkeep, we're looking at also the social impact. How does that look like? Because ICT also creates a way of building jobs to restore dignity back to people.